Welcome back. I am so excited that you have joined me again in the Aligned Womb, Aligned You podcast. I'm Kate Nagai, and I am your host and womb guide on this journey. I'm here to help you to lean into the language of your menstrual cycle so that you can align yourself and awaken and activate to your womb wisdom to live the most inspired life. I am so excited to jump into this episode and to dive into today's topic. So let's get started. Welcome back, everyone. So this week, I want to dive into a bit of a personal story of my own experience with my menstruation that just happened. It has been years. I don't even remember the last time I had a painful period. It literally has probably been over 10 years since I've experienced any really big discomfort, right? I get some breast tenderness usually before my period a little bit. I might get the occasional migraine a day or two before, but other than that, it's like a secret ninja. It just comes out of nowhere. And I only know what's about to happen because I chart and I know that we're in this window that it'll come either on day 27 or day 28. It's never really longer than day 28, and the earliest it's ever come is 27. But this last period was intense. And not as intense as some people's, I will say that. When I say intense, it was just intense because I haven't felt pain in a very long time. I had, on day 27, I had a bit of a headache, just mild headache, nothing big, but probably at least 2 days before my period came, you could really feel that downward pull. I knew it was coming. There was just this gentle achiness in through the lower belly, in through the pelvis. So I knew it was coming, which is very odd for me to feel those symptoms beforehand. And then on the actual bleed day, first of all, I spotted for probably 2 days, right? And not a lot. It's just oh, today's the day, it's coming. I can tell because I'm starting to spot. And then all of a sudden it would disappear and nothing would come again for several hours, if not the next day. So it was really interesting how it was this mind game of I could feel the sensations. I could see very rarely or occasional blood. And then it would just disappear. It was playing this game with me. And then finally, when it finally came on, for 2 days, the cramping that I had was intense. It was so bad on the night, the full night after my first full day of bleeding. So it was just going into day 2. I woke up at 4 a.m. because the pain woke me up. That's how intense it was. And I was whoa, this is crazy. What is going on? Because I really, truly have not felt pain in a very long time. And I'm lucky the pain only lasted for about 2.5 days and then it disappeared. And my period is generally fairly short. It only hangs around for 3, maybe 4 days now. It's usually a good 1.5 days of bleeding and then really 2 days of lightness. So with this period, the pain is what caught my attention. The pain before the bleed and the pain during the bleed. Now here's the thing with pain, is that when we're in pain, we have this natural tendency or pattern, I guess I would call it, to automatically start to judge, to go into this, I hate my bleed days, go into, I'm broken, something's wrong with me. But for me, when the pain came on, and this is the lesson that I really want to portray today, is that I got curious. I got curious of okay, I haven't felt this in years. What's going on? What have I chosen to do that might be throwing my body out of balance? Why is my body talking to me right now? For me, pain is my body's way of trying to talk to me, to tell me something. Because really that's what it is. Pain is not an actual indicator that damage is being done to the body. It is a way for the body to get you to wake up and to look at what's happening, like to bring your attention to something. And so that's what I did. What's going on? What have I been doing? And the last 2 months, or the last 2 cycles, I have been very much in physical doing mode. I've been helping my mom clear up my dad's estate. And like when I say clear up his estate, I mean like I'm physically out there moving stuff and working long days. And, I've gotten more physical exercise in the past 2 months than I have in a long time. But I've pushed. And the last 2 cycles, I've been at her house working. Even though I know the wisdom is to sit back, to relax, to take it easy, to do things to care for your cycle, it always felt like these were time-sensitive things that I just needed to push through. Or this is the weekend that was going to work for me to be out there. And so I would just push through. And this particular last one, I was doing lots of heavy lifting and yard work. So even though I knew my period was there, on day 1, when I started to bleed, I still got up and I still went outside at 8 in the morning and started hauling shit on stuff and getting stuff done. And I just pushed through the pain. I was lifting. I was engaging my pelvic floor to, lift heavy things. And then I wondered why the next, or not even the next day, but in the more early hours of the next day, I woke up in intense pain. And it's because I was not letting my body rest. And my body was like, listen, enough's enough. So in that moment of pain, I was like, okay, I have pushed for 2 cycles. I have worked through my menstruation 2 cycles. And my body is asking me now just to stop and just to take care of itself. And an interesting thing is that my bleed has now it's probably been about 2 weeks ago. And in the last 2 weeks, when I finally said, okay, I'm going to listen to my body. I'm going to go back into cycle syncing my life. I'm going to go back to moving in accordance and in rhythm with my hormones. I've been exhausted. I am so tired. And I've decided it's probably because I've pushed so hard that my body is now that I've finally taken the exhale and I've allowed myself to soften and to do less and have less expectations, I am tired. My body's making me rest. It's catching up on that rest. And so my message, I guess, today is when we have these painful periods, how can we get curious about what we've been doing the previous 3 cycles? Because egg maturation is 100 days. It's 3 cycles. It's 3 months. And so what have I been doing? And it's not that the egg itself is like, well, it is the egg, but I know a lot of times when we hear egg quality, we think of fertility. And yes, it's important for fertility, but egg quality is also important for how our ovulation is, how our swap over in hormones are. So we really need a healthy egg in order to create that progesterone in the second half of our cycle. The egg is what helps the progesterone. The egg shell is what creates the progesterone in the second half of our cycle. And so if we have really good egg quality, if we have a really solid ovulation, we're going to have a nice level of progesterone. And progesterone is what's going to balance the estrogen of the first half of the cycle that can create some of that irritability in that second half of the cycle. So they counterbalance each other. And so it's really important that we take care of our whole cycle. And so ask yourself, what happened in the last 3 months? What have I been pushing through? What have I not been living harmoniously in my cycle with? And then sometimes there's just circumstances. Sometimes it's just life. Like, honestly, maybe I could have scheduled a little bit better for when I was going to be on my bleeds and not go those weekends, but also looking at my schedule, those were the only 2 weekends that I could go. And so, I pushed because I knew my availability, and I did it consciously, knowing that I was sacrificing my cycle health to do it. And it came at a cost. It came at a high cost. So now the beautiful thing is, even though I'm in my ovulation right now, or the ovulation phase, the inner summer, I should feel like this potency of energy. And I do today. I feel the rising today. But yesterday, I was knocked out. I had nothing to give anybody. I was so tired. It felt like another inner winter. And what I did is I just gave myself permission not to do anything. This podcast was actually supposed to be released yesterday. I didn't have the energy. And so I think that sometimes this is the beauty, is knowing the things that are mandatory that we have to tend to. And then knowing the things that there's some room for forgiveness. And then knowing the things that we can just say, not today, another day. And allowing yourself permission to not always excel or push or be perfect. God, if anything this cycle has taught me is the importance of letting go of expectations. And so if you're somebody who is suffering with painful periods, the first step is to make the small little tweaks in how you can start to align your life, align your day-to-day activities, align your schedule with the shifting hormones that are happening in your body. And if you're like, what does that all mean? I talk about this throughout this podcast all the time. But there's also the She Sisterhood, which is an amazing monthly membership that I do, that has all this information in it. Like, the whole concept behind the She Sisterhood is giving you all the tools and resources in how to learn how to cycle sync your life, right? How to cycle sync your marriage, how to cycle sync your parenting skills, how to cycle sync your work life, how to cycle sync your self-care routines. Like, it is all around how we can cycle sync our life and how we can really start to deepen into the appreciation of the divine feminine energy running through us, which as a whole, as a collective, as a society, we have really turned off. Not because it's bad, but that's because the system that we live in doesn't have space for that intuitive existence. So anyways, just a side note. So start thinking about how you can align your life a little bit more in cohesiveness with your hormonal shifts. Second of all, give yourself permission just to be less one cycle. Like, I think we are so much, or we're in such a society where we are taught that we have to be driven by achievements, by success, that we have to prove ourselves. We are not meant to do that. We are meant to be human. We're meant to be imperfect. We are meant for flexibility. We are meant to be cyclical. We are meant to shift and change all the time. In fact, every cycle is a birth and a death of who we are. Who we came into this cycle as will not be the same person we come into in our next cycle. And thank God for that, because how I'm feeling right now of this depletion, I am totally going into it. I'm sitting in it. I am saying, you push too hard and you're paying for it this cycle. So I'm really doing a lot to care for my body, so that next cycle I can go back to being, the powerhouse that I like to be sometimes. And then the third is, if you have painful periods, ask yourself, have I been pretending that I'm not bleeding this period? Because that's what I did this past cycle, is when I was bleeding, I just pushed through it. I didn't even say to my mom, who I'm working side by side with, listen, I'm bleeding. I can't do this much. Or can we do shorter days? Or can we take more breaks? I just kept pushing because I knew it was important. I knew that there was an expectation. And some of those expectations were expectations I put on myself, not even that she put on me. So, sometimes when we're tuning into our cycle and we're trying to give our inner winter the time it needs, we have to honor that we're in that. And we have to give ourselves permission to do less, right? So if you're in the office or you're working for somebody and you're bleeding, it might just be that you give yourself the okay before you walk in those doors, that today I'm going to operate a little bit slower. Today I'm not going to say yes as quickly. Today I may just close my door and do less. And you know what? The world will not crumble from it. So those would be my 3 tips of kind of how I've learned from my own cycle, especially this last one that was really painful. And I'll let you know when my period comes again if it balanced itself back out. But sometimes it's hard. Yesterday, it was hard for me to say, I know I have all these things I need to do. I know I need to release my podcast because it's Wednesday. I know that I need to send out a newsletter. I know I need to, the list went on and on and on. And instead, I stayed in bed for most of the day and I just rested and I took it easy. And we went out for hot soup for supper last night because I was like, I don't want to cook. So I'm just really taking care of myself. And this weekend, I'm super excited because I'm going to the Wild Rose Festival for anyone that might be going there. I'm a presenter there, and I am just going to be in the environment and be with a collective of women and just to feel the potency of what it can be with women in a space for a full weekend together. So I'm super excited about that. So I'm hoping all of that replenishes me and that my body kickstarts a really healthy cycle for the next bleed and that I am not in intense pain like I was this past cycle, because that was a new memory. It's been a long time since I've had a painful period. So, but at the same time, I didn't curse my body. I didn't curse womanhood. I was like, whoa, this is intense. What have I done? And then I looked at how I set myself up to be in this position where the body felt like it needed to talk to me. And in fact, that it needed to scream at me to get my attention. So it got it. I'm going back into my patterns of living cyclically, trusting my intuition, and being bold with people in my life and letting them know the intimacy of my cycle again when I need to have more time for me. Because that really what it comes down to is sometimes we don't live in accordance to our cycle because we're so afraid of outing ourselves as being bleeding or menopausal or whatever kind of women. And our body really needs us to just to own it, because it's not something that we've done. It's not something that we're being punished with. It is biologically how we are created. So we need to turn the dialogue on this and change how our cycle has been seen by the world, because it is just a natural process. But anyways, that's for another day. So I hope this helps you if you are somebody who's living in pain, to know that, there might be these small little shifts that you can do, these small little ways that you can honor your bleed and just come back into balance and hopefully start to minimize and resolve. And I should say too that, I have had clients who have had tremendously painful cycles their whole life and have become pain-free by cycle syncing their life. So, this can be a possibility for you. It's not impossible. So if you live with painful periods, how we can start to set ourselves up for success through our own behaviors can have a huge impact. And maybe we'll have another talk another day on painful periods, on some other things that we can do to really help heal that cycle, because this is one tool in the many tools that you can have in your toolkit. So that's it for this week. I hope that this was a bit of inspiration around how to get curious around your pain and not just get into a place of hating your period, but rather looking at, am I being honest with how I'm showing up for my cycle. So I hope this was helpful, and I look forward again to chatting with you next week. For way too long as women, we have been guided to hate our menstrual cycle and to curse our hormones. We have lost the art of seeing the inner power of being cyclical. So, if this podcast is inspiring you and waking up a new curiosity of how your cycle can be your superpower, I invite you to check out the She Sisterhood. This is a monthly membership that will align you to your unique rhythm through aligned womb yoga practices, cycle coaching on how to weave your cycle wisdom into everyday life, and to be part of a community of women that are awakening to their inner power. Remember, womb wisdom equals connection to self, which ultimately equals inspired living. And if you love this episode, don't forget to rate and review. I love seeing how this information is transforming your life.